The holographic display flickered to life, casting an ethereal blue glow across the observation deck of the Galactic Unified Defense Force (GDF) training center. Hundreds of military strategists from across the known galaxy watched with collective anticipation. The annual Advanced Battle Simulation was about to begin, a test so complex that no species had ever completed it in less than 3 standard days. Admiral Zexalk adjusted the neural interface on his translucent exoskeleton, his multiple eyes focusing intently on the incoming team. Humans. Again, the most unpredictable species in the known universe, somehow always managing to surprise even the most seasoned military minds. The training center stood as a marvel of technological engineering, suspended in the orbit of a neutron star. Its walls were constructed from adaptive metamaterials that could simulate virtually any conceivable combat environment. Generations of military cadets from countless star systems had tested their strategic abilities within these walls, but today felt different. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of her team, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp with an intensity that belied her years. Beside her, Marcus Chen ran final system checks on their collective neural network, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Aisha Okonkwo was already deep in concentration, her mind seemingly bridging the physical and digital realms. Team Unity, the central computer announced, "You are cleared for the Advanced Strategic Simulation. Prepare for immersion." The alien observers murmured, "Team Unity." Such a simple name for what was about to unfold. The human team represented a unique cross-section of Earth's most promising young minds. Elena came from a background of complex systems research, her doctoral work on adaptive intelligence having caught the attention of military recruiters. Marcus had been a top-tier competitive strategy game coordinator with a proven track record of unconventional problem-solving. Aisha brought expertise in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence that pushed the boundaries of traditional computational thinking. What made humans remarkable and frequently terrifying to other species was their ability to approach problems with a blend of creativity, intuition, and analytical precision that defied conventional logic. Where other species saw rigid strategic frameworks, humans saw flexible puzzles waiting to be solved. Admiral Zexalk remembered the briefings. Humans had a saying, "No plan survives first contact with the enemy." It was a philosophy that ran counter to the meticulously planned strategies of most galactic civilizations. Their military doctrine emphasized adaptability over predetermined protocols. The simulation parameters scrolled across the observation screens. A multi-dimensional conflict involving resource management, diplomatic negotiations, technological warfare, and direct combat. Previous top-performing teams had taken an average of 72 hours to navigate the most basic successful resolution. The complexity was intentional, designed to test the absolute limits of strategic thinking. Simulation initiating in 5, the computer's voice rang out. 4, 3, 2, 1. The human team moved with a synchronicity that looked almost choreographed. No verbal commands, no overt gestures, just an immediate, intuitive connection that seemed to transcend traditional communication methods. Alien strategists leaned forward. Something was different about this team. They weren't approaching the simulation like a problem to be solved, but like a living, breathing system to be understood and navigated. The first layers of the simulation began to unfold: complex geopolitical tensions, resource scarcity, technological barriers. Where previous teams would meticulously analyze each component, the humans seemed to be seeing something else entirely. Marcus's fingers moved almost imperceptibly, creating complex information networks faster than the simulation's own computational systems could track. Aisha was already identifying potential systemic vulnerabilities that weren't even part of the original simulation parameters. Elena appeared to be holding multiple potential scenarios in her mind simultaneously, evaluating and discarding strategies at a pace that seemed impossible. Admiral Zexalk felt a mixture of professional curiosity and growing unease. Humans were about to do something unprecedented. Again, the preparation room hummed with a quiet intensity that defied traditional military expectations. Where most teams would be reviewing complex tactical manuals or running rigid strategic simulations, Team Unity operated differently. A holographic display of interconnected data points swirled around Elena as she moved her hands, manipulating complex information networks with an almost intuitive grace. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by what appeared to be a chaotic array of game boards, digital interfaces, and seemingly unrelated objects. "We're not solving a problem," Elena murmured, more to herself than to her teammates. "We're understanding a living system." Aisha looked up from her neural interface, a wry smile crossing her face. Exactly. Most teams see the simulation as a linear challenge. We see it as a dynamic ecosystem. The preparation had begun days earlier in a manner that had confused their alien instructors. Instead of traditional strategic meetings, the team had spent hours playing complex cooperative games, engaging in improvisational problem-solving exercises, and exploring seemingly unrelated fields of study. One observation deck away, a group of senior military strategists watched in confusion. Commander Vexnara of the Krell Confederation leaned towards Admiral Zexalk, her translator rendering her commentary in crisp, precise tones. "They are not preparing as we expected," she observed. "Look at them. No standard tactical analysis, no traditional wargame scenarios." Marcus was currently constructing what appeared to be an intricate network using physical and holographic connections. Colored threads connected digital projections, creating a three-dimensional map that seemed to pulse with its own internal logic. To the untrained eye, it looked like chaos. To those who understood complex systems, it was something else entirely. "Information flows like water," Marcus explained to no one in particular. "You don't control water. You understand its nature, its potential paths, its interactions." Aisha had transformed one section of their preparation area into a living computational model. Quantum algorithms danced alongside biological system simulations, creating a hybrid approach that defied traditional computational boundaries. She was essentially treating the upcoming simulation as a complex, adaptive organism rather than a static problem to be solved. The team's preparation methodology was a radical departure from established military training protocols, where most species approached strategic challenges with rigid, predetermined frameworks. The humans were building a flexible, living strategy that could adapt in real time. Elena's background in complex systems research had revealed a fundamental truth. Most strategic failures occurred not from a lack of information, but from an inability to process and adapt to that information quickly enough. Their preparation was about building a collective intelligence that could think faster than the simulation itself. "Remember," Elena said, looking at her teammates, "we're not trying to predict every possible outcome. We're creating a system that can generate solutions faster than the problems can emerge." The alien observers found their approach bewildering. Traditional military strategy involved meticulously planned responses, carefully cataloged potential scenarios, and rigid decision-making hierarchies. The human team seemed to be creating something else entirely, a living, breathing strategic intelligence that could reshape itself moment by moment. Marcus pulled up a historical analysis showing how previous teams had approached similar challenges. The data visualization revealed a series of linear, predictable approaches that seemed almost quaint compared to their current methodology. "Look at the pattern," he said, highlighting the rigid decision trees of past simulation participants. "They're playing chess when we're designing an entirely new game." Aisha's computational models began to interact with Marcus's network diagrams, creating a dynamic representation of potential strategic responses that seemed to evolve in real time. It was less a strategic plan and more a living, breathing approach to problem solving. As the final preparation hours ticked down, the team's energy shifted. They weren't nervous. They weren't excited. They were focused, not on winning, but on understanding. Admiral Zexalk watched the preparation with a growing sense of professional curiosity. Something fundamental was happening here, a reimagining of what strategic thinking could be. The simulation was hours away, but Team Unity was already several steps ahead. The simulation chamber materialized around Team Unity like a living, breathing environment. Holographic landscapes shifted and transformed, presenting a complex geopolitical scenario that would challenge the most advanced strategic minds in the galaxy. Elena felt the neural interface synchronize with her teammates. It was more than a technological connection, it was a shared consciousness, a collective intelligence that moved beyond individual perception. Marcus and Aisha became extensions of her awareness, their thoughts and insights blending into a seamless strategic framework. The initial simulation parameters appeared, a resource-scarce planetary system on the brink of multiple concurrent conflicts. Technological barriers, diplomatic tensions, and potential military confrontations layered themselves into a complexity that had defeated every previous team. Most military teams would approach this as a series of sequential problems. Team Unity saw it differently, as an interconnected ecosystem of challenges where solving one aspect could fundamentally reshape all others. Initial scan complete, Marcus's voice echoed through their shared neural network. But it wasn't just a verbal communication. It was a multi-dimensional information burst that carried contextual nuance, emotional undertones, and predictive possibilities. The alien observers watched in growing bewilderment. The human team wasn't moving like a traditional military unit. They moved like a single adaptive organism. Aisha's computational models began generating potential scenarios at a rate that exceeded the simulation's own predictive capabilities. Where previous teams would spend hours analyzing a single strategic approach, she was creating and discarding potential solutions in milliseconds. The first layer of the simulation revealed a complex resource distribution problem. A mineral-rich planetary system was caught between three competing political entities, each with unique technological capabilities and historical tensions. Most teams would immediately begin calculating military strategies or diplomatic negotiations. Team Unity approached it differently. "We're not solving the conflict," Elena transmitted through their neural link. "We're understanding the systemic pressures creating the conflict." Marcus's strategic overlay began mapping the economic, technological, and cultural interconnections. It wasn't just about resources. It was about the complex web of relationships that created scarcity and tension. Aisha's computational models started identifying potential technological interventions that could fundamentally reshape the entire systemic dynamic. She wasn't just looking at solving the immediate challenge. She was looking at transforming the underlying conditions that created the challenge. The simulation began to react. Where previous teams would trigger predictable response patterns, Team Unity's approach created something entirely unexpected. The simulation's own adaptive algorithms seemed almost confused by their approach. Admiral Zexalk leaned forward, multiple eyes narrowing in concentration. Something unprecedented was happening. The first hour of the simulation passed differently than anyone expected. Instead of moving toward a resolution, Team Unity seemed to be redesigning the entire systemic framework. They weren't playing the game, they were reimagining its fundamental rules. Marcus identified a subtle technological intervention that could redistribute resources more equitably. It wasn't a military solution. It wasn't a diplomatic solution. It was a systemic solution that addressed the root causes of the conflict. Aisha's computational models began implementing the intervention, creating ripple effects that transformed the entire simulation landscape. Technological barriers dissolved. Economic pressures shifted. Cultural tensions began to realign. Elena maintained the overarching strategic perspective, ensuring that each intervention maintained a holistic balance. They weren't solving individual problems. They were creating a new, more adaptive system. The alien observers grew quiet. This wasn't just a different approach to military strategy. This was a fundamental reimagining of problem-solving itself. 1 hour into the simulation, Team Unity had already transformed the entire systemic landscape in ways no previous team had even conceived possible, and they were just getting started. The simulation entered its second phase, revealing layers of complexity that would have overwhelmed any traditional military team. Where previous participants saw obstacles, Team Unity saw opportunities for systemic transformation. Aisha's computational models began to dance across the holographic interfaces, revealing patterns that existed between the lines of conventional understanding. Her fingers moved with a rhythmic precision, creating computational bridges between seemingly unrelated data points. "We're not just solving the problem," she transmitted through their neural link. "We're redefining the parameters of the problem itself." Marcus caught the subtle implications of her insight. His strategic overlay began to map the interconnections, revealing how small interventions could create cascading changes throughout the entire simulated ecosystem. It was less about direct confrontation and more about strategic reconfiguration. Elena maintained the overarching perspective, her mind acting as a stabilizing force that kept their collective intelligence focused and adaptive. She could see how each of their individual approaches merged into a unified, dynamic strategy. The simulation began to react in unexpected ways. Its adaptive algorithms, designed to challenge even the most advanced strategic teams, found themselves struggling to predict or contain Team Unity's approach. Admiral Zextalk watched with a mixture of professional fascination and growing unease. The human team wasn't just playing the simulation, they were fundamentally reimagining its underlying logic. A complex diplomatic scenario emerged. 3 planetary systems, each with intricate technological and cultural barriers, faced potential conflict. Traditional military strategy would involve calculating potential combat outcomes or diplomatic compromises. Team Unity saw something different entirely. Marcus identified a subtle technological network that could serve as a communication bridge. It wasn't about forcing cooperation, it was about creating a system that made cooperation the most natural outcome. Aisha's computational models began to implement the intervention, creating a technological framework that dissolved cultural and technological barriers. Her approach went beyond traditional problem-solving. She was essentially redesigning the systemic infrastructure that created conflict. Elena provided the strategic oversight, ensuring that each intervention maintained a delicate balance. They weren't just solving immediate challenges, they were creating a more adaptive and resilient system. The alien observers grew increasingly quiet. This wasn't just a different approach to military strategy. It was a fundamental reimagining of how complex systems could interact and evolve. One subtle intervention began to create unexpected ripple effects. The simulation's own adaptive algorithms seemed to struggle, unable to predict or contain the team's approach. "We're not breaking the system," Elena transmitted to her teammates. "We're helping it find a more efficient configuration." Marcus's strategic overlay revealed the deeper implications. By identifying and dissolving systemic barriers, they were creating pathways for more natural cooperation. It was less about winning and more about enabling potential. Aisha's computational models continued to generate and discard potential scenarios at an unprecedented rate. Where previous teams would spend hours analyzing a single approach, she was creating and evaluating multiple potential interventions simultaneously. The simulation began to transform. Technological barriers dissolved. Cultural tensions realigned. Economic pressures shifted in ways that created more balanced and sustainable outcomes. Admiral Zexalk felt a growing sense of professional admiration. This wasn't just a military strategy. This was a new approach to understanding complex systemic interactions. The alien observers watched as Team Unity continued to reshape the simulation's landscape. They weren't just solving problems. They were creating a more adaptive and resilient framework for understanding complex challenges. And they were just getting started. The simulation chamber pulsed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Team Unity had transformed from a group of individual strategists into a singular adaptive intelligence that moved beyond traditional cognitive boundaries. 15 minutes. The number hung in the air, almost unbelievable. 15 minutes to solve a simulation that had consistently defeated the most advanced strategic teams in the galaxy. Elena felt the collective consciousness of her team reaching a crescendo. Marcus's strategic insights, Aisha's computational brilliance, and her own systemic understanding merged into a singular, powerful approach that redefined the very concept of problem-solving. The final layers of the simulation began to unfold. Multiple planetary systems, complex technological barriers, deep-seated cultural conflicts. All of these converged into a moment of extraordinary potential. Most teams would see these challenges as obstacles to overcome. Team Unity saw them as opportunities for transformation. "We're not just solving the problem," Marcus transmitted through their neural link. "We're revealing the underlying potential of the system." Aisha's computational models reached a level of complexity that seemed to blur the line between technology and intuition. She wasn't just analyzing the simulation, she was engaging with it as a living, breathing entity. The alien observers watched in stunned silence. Admiral Zexalk felt something close to professional awe. This wasn't just a military strategy. This was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent systems could interact and evolve. The simulation began to respond in ways its own creators hadn't anticipated. Where previous teams triggered predictable response patterns, Team Unity created something entirely unprecedented. A subtle technological intervention began to dissolve long-standing cultural barriers. Economic models reshaped themselves, creating pathways for cooperation that seemed impossible moments before. Technological limitations transformed into opportunities for collaborative innovation. Elena maintained the overarching perspective, ensuring that each intervention maintained a delicate balance of possibility and practicality. They weren't just solving immediate challenges, they were creating a framework for long-term systemic resilience. The neural interface between team members pulsed with an intensity that went beyond traditional communication. They were thinking as a single adaptive organism, each member contributing their unique perspective to a collective intelligence that was greater than the sum of its parts. Marcus identified interconnections that most strategic teams would have missed entirely. It wasn't about direct confrontation or linear problem-solving. It was about understanding the subtle dance of systemic interactions. Aisha's computational models generated potential scenarios at a rate that seemed to defy logical comprehension. Where previous teams would spend hours analyzing a single approach, she was creating and discarding potential solutions in milliseconds. The simulation chamber began to shimmer, its adaptive algorithms struggling to contain or predict Team Unity's approach. 12 minutes. Then 13. 14. 15. Complete system resolution. The chamber went silent. The holographic displays froze, capturing the moment of unprecedented achievement. Commander Vexnera of the Krell Confederation leaned forward, multiple sensory organs focusing intently. "That's impossible," she whispered, her translator rendering the words with a mix of disbelief and professional respect. Admiral Zexalk said nothing. He didn't need to. The implications were clear. Team Unity had done more than complete a simulation. They had demonstrated a fundamentally different approach to understanding complex challenges. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about revealing the hidden potential within seemingly impossible systems. The 15-minute breakthrough would change everything. The aftermath room buzzed with an electric tension. Holographic displays surrounded Team Unity, breaking down their 15-minute breakthrough in exquisite detail. Alien strategists, military experts, and computational analysts from a dozen different star systems crowded the observation areas. "This isn't just a simulation success," Elena explained, her voice calm and measured. "It's a demonstration of adaptive intelligence. The holographic displays began to reveal the intricate layers of their approach. Each decision, each intervention appeared not as a linear strategy, but as a complex web of interconnected possibilities. Where traditional strategic analysis showed straight lines, their approach revealed a three-dimensional network of potential interactions. Marcus stepped forward, highlighting key moments of their simulation breakthrough. "We didn't solve the problem," he emphasized. "We transformed the underlying system that created the problem." Asia's computational models continued to dance across the displays, showing how their approach differed fundamentally from every previous team. Most strategic teams saw challenges as obstacles to overcome. Team Unity saw them as dynamic systems waiting to be understood. Admiral Zexalk watched closely, multiple sensory organs focusing on every detail. The human team wasn't just breaking records, they were rewriting the fundamental understanding of strategic thinking. "Notice how each intervention creates multiple potential paths," Asia explained, her fingers tracing complex computational networks. "Traditional approaches try to predict and control. We create adaptive frameworks that can respond in real time." The analysis revealed something extraordinary. Team Unity hadn't just solved the simulation faster than any previous team. They had fundamentally reimagined how complex systems could be approached and transformed. Commander Vex Nera of the Krell Confederation reviewed the data with growing professional respect. "They're not treating this as a military problem," she observed to her colleagues. "They're treating it as a living, adaptive system." The holographic displays continued to unfold their approach. Each moment revealed layers of complexity that went beyond traditional strategic thinking. They hadn't just found a solution, they had created a new way of understanding problem-solving itself. Elena's systemic approach became clear. She wasn't looking at individual challenges, but at the interconnected nature of complex systems. Each intervention was carefully designed to create multiple potential positive outcomes, rather than forcing a single predetermined solution. Marcus's strategic insights showed how technological and cultural barriers could be transformed into opportunities for collaboration. He wasn't solving conflicts. He was creating frameworks that made conflict less likely. Aisha's computational models demonstrated a level of adaptive intelligence that seemed to blur the line between technology and intuition. She was essentially creating a living, breathing strategic approach that could evolve in real time. The alien experts began to understand something profound. This wasn't just a military breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent systems could interact and solve complex challenges. "We're not special," Elena addressed the gathered experts. "We're just willing to see problems differently. Every challenge is an opportunity to understand a system more deeply." The analysis continued to reveal layers of their approach. Traditional strategic thinking tried to predict and control. Team Unity created adaptive frameworks that could respond and transform. Marcus highlighted how their approach went beyond linear problem-solving. "It's about understanding the underlying potential of the system," he explained, "not just solving immediate challenges, but creating frameworks for long-term resilience." Asia's computational models continued to generate insights, showing how their approach could be applied to challenges far beyond military strategy. Economic systems, technological development, cultural interactions, all could benefit from this adaptive approach. Admiral Zexalk felt a growing sense of professional admiration. This was more than a military achievement. This was a fundamental shift in understanding complex, systemic interactions. The analysis room continued to buzz with excitement, possibility, and a growing recognition that everything had just changed. The implications of Team Unity's breakthrough spread across the galaxy like a complex system coming to life. What had begun as a military simulation was now transforming fundamental approaches to problem-solving across multiple civilizations. Political chambers buzzed with discussions. Research institutions scrambled to understand the team's methodology. Military academies began redesigning entire strategic training programs. Elena sat in a high-level briefing, her calm demeanor contrasting with the excitement surrounding their achievement. Diplomatic representatives from dozens of star systems listened intently as she explained their approach. "We're not talking about a military strategy," she emphasized. "We're discussing a fundamental way of understanding complex systems." Marcus stood beside her, his strategic insights complementing her systemic perspective. Aisha's computational models ran silently in the background, continuing to generate insights that challenged traditional thinking. The Galactic Unified Defense Force found itself at a crossroads. Their long-established strategic training programs suddenly seemed obsolete. The human team had demonstrated that adaptive intelligence was more powerful than rigid strategic frameworks. Admiral Zexalk presented their findings to the Interstellar Strategic Council. "This is more than a breakthrough," he explained. "This is a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent systems can interact and solve complex challenges." Political leaders from various star systems began to see potential applications far beyond military strategy. Economic systems, technological development, cultural interactions, all could benefit from this new approach to understanding complexity. The team received unprecedented offers. Research institutions wanted to study their collaborative process. Government agencies sought to implement their adaptive thinking methodologies. Technology companies wanted to develop new computational frameworks based on their approach. Aisha's computational models began to reveal broader applications. Her research suggested that their method could be applied to challenges ranging from environmental sustainability to interstellar resource management. "It's not about having the right answer," she explained during a follow-up conference. "It's about creating systems that can find the most adaptive solutions." Marcus developed training programs that began to reshape how strategic thinking was understood. His approach focused on creating adaptive intelligence rather than memorizing predetermined strategies. Elena continued to emphasize the core principle of their success. "We're not solving problems," she repeated in multiple forums. "We're creating frameworks that allow systems to solve themselves." The educational impact was immediate. Military academies across multiple star systems began redesigning their curricula. The focus shifted from rigid strategic training to developing adaptive, collaborative intelligence. Technological innovations began to emerge inspired by their approach. Computational systems that could adapt in real time, strategic frameworks that emphasized collaborative problem-solving, communication networks that could transform barriers into opportunities. The Interstellar Research Consortium offered the team unprecedented resources to continue their work, but they were more interested in sharing their approach than in personal gain. "This isn't about us," Elena explained during a press conference. "This is about showing that there's always another way to understand a challenge." Marcus developed collaborative training programs that began to spread across multiple civilizations. The focus was no longer on individual achievement, but on collective intelligence. Aisha's computational research opened new frontiers in adaptive technology. Her work suggested that the principles they had demonstrated could revolutionize everything from artificial intelligence to interstellar communication. The ripple effects continued to expand. What had begun as a 15-minute simulation was now transforming how multiple civilizations approached complex challenges. Admiral Zexalk reflected on the profound shift. The human team had done more than solve a simulation. They had revealed a fundamental truth about intelligence, adaptation, and potential. The galaxy was changing, and it was just the beginning. The sunset painted the training center's observation deck in hues of amber and deep purple. Elena, Marcus, and Aisha stood together, looking out at the vast expanse of stars that stretched before them. Their 15-minute simulation breakthrough felt both like a lifetime ago and just the beginning of something much larger. "We didn't solve a problem," Elena reflected, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "We demonstrated a way of seeing the world differently." Marcus chuckled, his strategic mind already processing the future implications. "Perspective is everything," he added. "Most people see barriers. We see potential connections." Aisha's computational models continued to run in the background of her neural interface, generating possibilities faster than most minds could comprehend. Every challenge, she said, is just an undiscovered opportunity for transformation. Admiral Zixok approached them, his multiple sensory organs moving with a mixture of respect and curiosity. The alien strategist had become something of an ally, understanding that their breakthrough was more than just a military achievement. "You've changed everything," he observed, "and yet you seem unchanged." The team exchanged knowing glances. Their achievement wasn't about personal glory. It was about showing a fundamentally different approach to understanding complex challenges. Invitations continued to pour in from across the galaxy. Research institutions wanted to study their collaborative process. Government agencies sought to implement their adaptive thinking methodologies. Technology companies wanted to develop new computational frameworks based on their approach, but they were more interested in sharing their approach than in personal recognition. A holographic display showed the global impact of their simulation breakthrough. Educational systems were being redesigned. Strategic thinking was being reimagined. Collaborative intelligence was becoming a priority across multiple civilizations. "We're not special," Elena would often say in interviews. "We're just willing to see problems as opportunities for understanding." Marcus had begun developing training programs that emphasized adaptive thinking. Instead of teaching predetermined strategies, he focused on developing the ability to create dynamic, responsive frameworks. Aisha's computational research continued to push the boundaries of adaptive technology. Her work suggested that the principles they had demonstrated could revolutionize everything from artificial intelligence to interstellar communication. The Interstellar Strategic Council had created an entire research division dedicated to understanding their approach. But the team knew that true innovation couldn't be institutionalized. It was about maintaining a way of thinking, a perspective that saw challenges as living, dynamic systems. "The moment you believe you have the perfect solution," Marcus often told students, "is the moment you stop learning." Their achievement had become more than a military breakthrough. It was a philosophical shift in how intelligent systems could interact and solve complex challenges. Alina looked out at the stars, understanding that their 15-minute simulation was just a small demonstration of a much larger potential. Humanity's strength had always been its ability to adapt, to see beyond existing frameworks, to imagine possibilities that others couldn't see. "We're not trying to be better than anyone else," Aisha explained during a follow-up conference. "We're trying to show that there's always another way to understand a challenge." The team had become more than individual strategists. They were living examples of a new approach to intelligence, collaborative, adaptive, always evolving. As the stars continued to shine, their achievement reminded everyone of a fundamental truth. The greatest discoveries come not from having all the answers, but from being willing to see challenges in entirely new ways. The galaxy was changing, and they were just getting started.